So you're a parent, and you keep hearing this term MTHFR, and you've probably got a million questions, right? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break down the actual science behind this genetic mutation in children so you can get some clear, fact-based answers. And really, this is the big one, isn't it? What does it actually mean for your child? There's just so much conflicting information out there, and honestly, it can be pretty overwhelming. So today, we're going to focus on what the science really says. All right, here's our game plan. We'll start with the basics, then we'll dive into the risks that are actually backed by science. We'll tackle some of those common myths you see online, discuss the links to conditions like ADHD and autism, and then wrap up by answering your biggest questions about folate and supplements. So let's jump right in. First things first, let's get on the same page about what we're even talking about when we say MTHFR. So think of MTHFR as a gene that gives your body instructions, like a recipe for making a super important enzyme. Now, a mutation on this gene is kind of like a little typo in that recipe. It might mean the enzyme doesn't work quite as well as it should, and this matters because it can affect how your body uses folate, which is a really crucial B vitamin. And this is why MTHFR is such a huge topic when it comes to kids. Folate is absolutely essential when they're growing so fast during infancy and childhood. A shortage can have some real effects. So now, let's take a look at what some of those known risks actually are. So in this next part, we're going to zero in on what the medical research actually points to as potential risks and symptoms that are linked to MTHFR variants and folate deficiency. This right here, this is probably the connection you'll see backed up by science the most. Certain MTHFR variants, especially when you combine them with low folate levels, have been flagged as a risk factor for serious birth defects of the brain and spine. And what's really fascinating is how specific the research gets. We're talking about a particular variant, the homozygous MTHFR 677TT. Now, homozygous just means you inherited that variant from both your parents. And having that specific one is linked to about a 70% higher risk for spina bifida. It really shows you that not all MTHFR variants are created equal, but it doesn't stop with neural tube defects. If a folate deficiency is in the picture because of an MTHFR mutation, it can be linked to a whole bunch of other things like anemia, certain heart defects, challenges with growth, impacts on brain development, and even some digestive problems. Ugh, the internet. You can find just about anything, right? And when it comes to MTHFR, there are a lot of claims floating around. So let's play a little game of myth versus fact and separate the real science from the online chatter. Here's a big one you might have seen. The idea that you can spot an MTHFR mutation by looking for physical things like a tongue tie or a stork bite. The fact is, there's just no scientific evidence to back that up. I mean, stork bites? They're super common. We see them in 30 to 50% of all newborns, whether they have an MTHFR variant or not. All right, let's dive into a topic that I know is a huge concern for so many parents: the possible link between MTHFR and conditions like ADHD and autism. This is a really complex area of research, so let's break down what the studies are actually telling us. So a really big study dug into this and found something interesting. There's a significant link between one specific MTHFR variant, the C677T, and autism. But here's the twist. That same study looked at another common variant, A1298C, and found no significant link. This is so important because it tells us, again, the type of variant really matters. And what about ADHD? Well, here the research kind of zooms out a bit. It suggests that it might not be about the MTHFR gene alone. It's more about the whole team of genes that help your body use folate, the entire folate metabolism pathway. It seems like variations in this whole system might play a role in ADHD traits. That brings us to the really practical stuff. You know, the what do I do now questions. If you know your child has an MTHFR mutation, what are the next steps? This last section is all about answering those frequently asked questions about folate and supplements, and this is usually question number one on every parent's mind. If my kid has trouble with regular folic acid, what about the active form, called methylfolate? Is that safe for them? The short answer, according to the research, yes. Studies have shown that a specific form, L-methylfolate, is generally well tolerated by kids and teenagers. Okay, so it's safe, but how much is the right amount? That's where we can turn to some really solid guidelines. The National Academy of Sciences has actually laid this all out for us. As you can see, the daily recommendation for folate goes up as kids get older. You'll also see it's measured in DFE, which stands for dietary folate equivalents. Don't worry about the term, it's just the standard way to measure it. Think of this as a great starting point to make sure your child is getting what they need. Anytime we talk about a supplement, we have to talk about the other side of the coin. What about potential side effects? What should you be on the lookout for? So while methylfolate is generally safe, getting the dosage wrong can sometimes lead to side effects. You might see things like changes in sleep, maybe some irritability or hyperactivity, or even some tummy troubles. And that is exactly why it's so important to work with a healthcare professional to figure out the perfect dose for your child. As we start to wrap this up, I want to leave you with this one really important thought. Having an MTHFR variant is incredibly common. We're talking 60 to 70% of people worldwide are carriers, and for a huge number of those people, they never have any symptoms. So remember, having the variant does not automatically mean there's a health problem. So what does this all mean? We've learned that MTHFR is a common genetic trait, that some specific types are linked to certain risks, but also that there are really practical things you can do to support your child's health. In the end, understanding your child's genetics is just one more piece of the puzzle, right? It's another tool in your parenting toolbox to help you make informed decisions. The next step is figuring out what to do with that knowledge. Thanks so much for tuning in.